Hello, and welcome to today's Information Week webinar, Why Autonomous Endpoint Management is the Next Step for Security and IT Operations, sponsored by Tanium and broadcast by Informa Tech Target. Terry Sweeney here with Information Week. I'll be your moderator for today's discussion. First off, though, some context to frame the conversation. IT and security functions have grown more complex, and manual processes and fragmented teams are, safe to say, struggling to keep up. This also helps explain the rise of autonomous IT, which is a combination of intelligence, automation, governance, and real-time visibility. Our speaker will address this more in just a minute, but autonomous IT looks to unify teams and boost resilience and also close critical gaps. Our session today will explore how AI-driven transformation is addressing the toughest challenges that IT leaders are up against today and how it's transforming organizations of all types. On that note, I'm excited to introduce our speaker. I'm joined by Melissa Reshaping, Senior Director, Security and Product Design Research with Tanium. Melissa, welcome to this Information Week webinar series.
Thank you so much, Terry. Happy to be here.
Before we get started, I just want to remind our audience of a couple of logistics. If you've been here before, you know this webinar is designed to be interactive. At the top of your screen, you'll see buttons you can click on to learn more about today's speaker, download resources, and also share this webinar on social media. Okay, let's get to it. Melissa, officially welcome to the Information Week webinar. This is an interesting topic and straddles a number of different areas here, and just really ripe for the Information Week audience. But broaden the context for us here, if you will. Clearly, AI itself is a massive inflection point for technology and business users, but autonomous IT shouldn't be confused with that other AI, although there is a relationship there. Kick us off by describing exactly what autonomous AI, as well as what its relationship is to artificial intelligence.
So when a lot of people think about artificial intelligence, they're thinking about your large language models, ChatGPT, Copilot, the things that are basically like a chat system where you ask a question and it's giving you results back very conversationally. That is not the only application of AI, but that's kind of the consumer version. When we start talking about autonomous IT, and you'll hear the term agentic AI and agentic workflows, now we're talking not just about a transactional conversation, we're actually talking about AI that's taking action, AI that's doing parts of your workflow for you. So to set the stage broadly, I think we need to make sure we're clear that AI, agentic AI, and autonomous IT are related but distinct.
That's a great way to hold it. With that in mind, how has automated IT changed how customers think about IT and also how they talk to you about it? What do you notice there?
I think that the last couple of years of development, especially the last 6 months, the advances that we've seen in some of the MCP server technology, so that's model context protocol, that allows these agents to interact with other data sets, other pieces of software in your organization. It's really kind of put an extra, like a nitro boost in the engine of IT departments who want to leverage that technology. And the reason I say that is because it's reduced the barrier to entry to building those complex automations and orchestrations. You are able to have a little more customized work that you can put into play if you're doing that yourself. I think it's also broadened people's idea of what might be possible. They're no longer limited to just what one particular product or tool is capable of doing. They're able to design bespoke workflows that fit their environment. I hear that theme a lot. Now, that's a double-edged sword. I think you're going to see organizations end up with tool sprawl of internally developed tooling that maybe they don't have good governance over. So we need to have a conversation about how are we governing all of this AI technology that we're introducing. That's where, when we zoom back out and talk, what is autonomous IT from my perspective, it's not just the agentic workflows, it is the governance and visibility that sits on top of it. The human needs to stay in the loop. We need to have good controls. That way the agentic workflow doesn't actually cause an outage.
Okay, and do those things happen in a separate platform in the cloud? Is it some hybrid combination? What do you foresee there?
I mean, from the Tanium perspective, obviously we see ourselves as the autonomous IT platform, and all of that is happening within the Tanium platform to do that orchestration, to give you the confidence scores, to build your progressive deployment rings, and that gives the end user the confidence that the action they're taking, they're turning over that power to an agentic workflow, but they're not turning over the visibility. They're not doing it blindly. And I think that's a big differentiator that makes a lot of leaders more comfortable at starting down this journey, because it is a little scary to say I'm going to take an automated action in my environment with something that thinks, for all intents and purposes, independently of my staff. Have I given it the right context? Have I given it the right policies? You need additional governance and oversight to get people comfortable with the technology so they modernize even faster. As people get comfortable with seeing the results and they see that it is reliable, they see the statistics of their own real-time environment, that's going to increase adoption. That's what I've been hearing.
And just to drill down a bit on the governance piece, are government industry organizations looking at the criteria that should be addressed there? How I think we're talking about guardrails, but also compliance pieces that organizations should comply with. Is that happening in the background here, or is that still waiting to materialize?
I think we can talk about governance as big governance, like big G governance, which is going to be things that govern, where AI tooling or autonomous technologies are allowed to be used, and that's going to be handled in the legislative and the regulatory bodies. But then there's the little G governance, which is what I hear more of, and I think that's more relevant to most organizations. You as an enterprise know what things you're subject to, what change control processes you have internally. When you bring in an autonomous IT solution, you're not bringing it, this isn't, it's novel technology, it's powerful technology, but it still has to abide by your organization's practices for change control, and for your deployment policies, the way you work things out through the rings. All of those internal guardrails still apply. So bringing in this technology, one of the first things you have to do is sit down and say, how do we implement our governance standards in an AI focused manner? How do we, don't just turn over the keys, like I said, make sure that you are building in safeguards, checks and balance, and human oversight. I cannot say that enough. There has to be human oversight before critical decisions get made.
Thanks. You've calmed me down there around that last point. I think we're all a little worried about that piece. Let's go back to the technology pieces of this. IT and security professionals are no strangers to complexity. They live with it daily, and I'm curious though about the scale of this challenge that lies ahead for them as processes and systems get more automated. Volume of data and inputs is growing exponentially. Say more about why manual fragmented processes are not going to be sufficient as we move into this world you're describing.
You've probably heard the analogy before that, you don't want Google Maps data or Waze Maps data from 6 hours ago or 6 months ago when you're trying to make a decision about how to navigate rush hour, right? You want something real time. And I think the legacy way of doing those kind of siloed, manual, broken workflows is akin to getting rush hour traffic information from 6 hours before rush hour. It may be helpful in knowing what road to pick, but it's not going to really tell you the state of the landscape, and it's not going to show you that there's a better way or that there might be an accident on I-95. If you can't tell, I live in the DC Metro, that you need to pick a different route home. I think that is going to be the biggest shift. I mentioned earlier in the conversation the model context protocols, the MCP. That is going to create, I described it to someone recently as like USB-C. Before USB-C, we had all these different dongles and connectors. And if you were like me, you would have a daisy chain of converters, to get, we've all got a drawer of them, I think, still left over. Think of the MCPs as the USB-C of the AI world. This allows a universal plug and play connector into different tools and data sources that is going to reduce the friction. You're not going to have to export a CSV from one tool to ingest it into another or have it analyzed by your AI in the middle and then out. Like, you want it to be as essentially as real time as possible. Think of it as having a virtual agent that is looking across all the same systems you would, but they're able to take in all that data simultaneously.
MCP, as I understand it, is really the glue that will connect all the different management systems that are required in a network chain, for example, to allow AI to do all of its many wonderful things.
Pretty much. And with great power comes great responsibility. So, visibility into those is equally important. My team was actually working on specifically some content around showing where are these MCP servers involved in my environment, what kind of protocols are they using, because you, the user, if you've got permissions on your computer, can connect to an MCP that your organization may not have blessed. So you want to be mindful of where it's not just are you installing it in your enterprise infrastructure, but how are your users leveraging it?
Okay. So we did a fairly top level description of autonomous IT. Most of our listeners understand this combines intelligence, automation, governance, visibility. Let's drill down some and help us better understand what autonomous IT really brings to the table from an operational day-to-day perspective.
I boil it down to better decision making based on what the real bottom line threat is. And I'll kind of tie that into an example. The average organization has a laundry list of CVEs that they're supposed to patch, and another laundry list, probably in a different team, of software that's out of date. Those CVEs have known exploited status, have threat actors actively exploiting them, but only a small percentage. Right? Most CVEs are not exploited. We know that. I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but it's single-digit percentages of CVEs are ever actually exploited. When we take a philosophy of autonomous IT to this problem set, we're looking at how do I rationalize the applications in my environment that need to be updated and the vulnerabilities and threat intelligence I have about what's actually being exploited in the wild and what puts my organization at risk. And then pair that with the telemetry and data about my environment itself to say, I have high confidence that rolling this update out is going to close the door to attackers and not cause an outage. Autonomous IT gives you the framework and the platform to do that. You have the guidance on which things are going to get you the biggest bang for your buck and risk reduction, but you also we use something called confidence scores, which allow you to say, have other people rolled this update back? Has this caused a performance impact on systems as it rolls through? I want to set a confidence threshold that unless you are 95% high confidence that this is not going to cause an outage, don't progress further through the rings. And that lets people go home at night versus babysitting a patch deployment on the weekends during their patch management window. That for me is empowering the user, the systems administrator, to make more tactical decisions that meaningfully reduce risk, not just, okay, we cleared 10,000 CVEs off the checklist this month.
Okay, so if I'm understanding right, the automation in autonomous IT would simplify or at least make more efficient the whole patching process, which gets so encumbered with like testing and just ensuring that there's not some unintended impact. Microsoft is routinely rolling out patches that address more than 100 CVEs in some instances. That's just one vendor of many that enterprises deal with. Can you give us some hope there?
I think that when we find one of the most interesting analysis sort of projects that I've done is working with our risk and exposure management team on if you could patch one application, which one application or which one deployment would actually improve your organization, which roll-up update from Microsoft would give you the least risk and the most result. That's going to differ a little bit by organization. Not every organization can apply certain patches. And so that's where having the telemetry that we provide, that real-time visibility, plus the external intelligence, and then adding in that confidence scoring mechanism puts the power in your hands to make a decision that's defensible, that you can say, hey, we are doing, like, we're going to accept the risk of not patching this vulnerability because our organization can't tolerate the potential downtime yet, or we want to wait 2 more weeks and see if there's any problems with it, versus, nope, we've got high confidence, this is safe to do. We're going to go ahead and roll it out now.
Okay, thanks for that. Shifting gears slightly, legacy technology and technology debt are notorious drags on transformation. Talk a little bit about the guidance you give to IT and security leaders around how to deal with legacy technology in this instance of autonomous IT.
I was actually having a really interesting conversation with my father-in-law via email this week. So my father-in-law was an old mainframe programmer back in like the 70s and 80s. And we were talking about, I think Anthropic put out a blog on using AI, using Claude to help modernize COBOL and get people migrating off of mainframes. And I was talking about this category of problem. And I agree with his assessment on it. He and I kind of came to a mutual agreement that I don't know that we're going to see these AI tools get people rapidly off of their legacy software. But I do think some of these, like Claude Code and some of these other AI tools, are going to give them a better way to prototype solutions and iterate over those ideas much faster as to what the modernization solution looks like. I personally, I'm not a developer, never claimed to be, but I have prototyped and delivered more proof of concepts in the last 3 months that are functional, that I can go to an engineering team and say, this is what I want this to actually look like. You go do the engineering best practices. That saved weeks of design meetings and drafts and, just wasted cycles. So I think that we're going to see more conversations like that, where we use AI technology to help prototype solutions to get people testing them faster versus kind of the old, well, we'll just kind of hack it together and build an export, then we'll ingest that elsewhere. I do think it's going to open the door to modernization in a novel way.
I mean, that's a great example, though, of like a non-developer skunkworks piece of software that actually does something that the organization needs. I mean, it strikes me this is a way for autonomous IT to help organizations keep pace with this rapid innovation. How else can they do this? What else is out there to help enterprises keep pace with I'll just call it rapid innovation?
I think that if you're a professional in this field, if you're a security leader, if you're an IT operations leader, and you're not teaching your teams or encouraging them to play around in the playground of AI tooling and more importantly, look for opportunities. Where could you leverage some of this technology that you haven't today? Sure, it may be a legacy system, but has the provider created an MCP server, or is there a way you can export that data to a data lake that does connect to your AI tooling to help you make decisions? The goal is not to keep data in a silo. You want that. We've talked for years about single pane of glass and unified point of views. I think we actually are at a point where we can surface more data in that same unified view today than ever before, and not just with like a clunky connector. It's actual intelligence and analysis of disparate data sources in a unified way. So keeping up with the pace of change, look for opportunity, encourage a little bit of a playground, create that dev environment where people can test those prototypes and that skunk works approach, because your systems administrators, your architects and engineers, they don't want to continue solving the same problems. They actually do want to innovate. And I'll be honest, man, the last 6 months has excited me about my industry and my work in a way that I haven't felt in since I basically started. Like this is a bold new frontier, and I can solve problems that 2 or 3 years ago felt insurmountable. So let people go play.
I think what you're describing has huge implications for IT leaders. I mean, this is I mean, this is a marketing term that gets tossed around so casually, but I mean, this in fact is revolutionary stuff we're on the precipice of. With that in mind, how can organizations drive greater visibility and resilience across the enterprise? How do you take what we're talking about and permeate it and really make it part of the culture, the work ethic, that kind of thing?
We're even seeing this within the tech industry of getting people to be comfortable thinking AI first. Every problem you solve, think, how would this benefit from automation? How would this benefit from an AI workload, or how can it feed into an AI workload? That's not because we are saying, oh, everybody has to do more with less, although there is some of that. It's really, how do we maximize the ROI out of these technologies that we're spending so much on as organizations? I think transformation and resilience, like resilience at the end of the day means you can recover faster. You know there's going to be an outage. You know there's going to be a potential breach. What can we use in autonomous technologies to predict things like hard drive crashes before they happen? What are those indicators we can start tying to, hey, this is potentially going to cause a database corruption issue and you need to get ahead of it? I think there's a really powerful opportunity, especially in things like endpoint performance and heuristic monitoring of adversary and threat behavior, to get, we call it moving further left, right? We want to be able to see the problem coming before it's a big giant headline coming, or headlight coming out of the train tunnel straight at our face. So this to me is an opportunity to leverage those tools, leverage the data analytics that they can feed to predict what might be a problem. You could liken it to your budget. If you were to feed your budget into something like Claude or ChatGPT and say, hey, here's how much I make, here's my upcoming bills, help me forecast. It could say, oh, you're going to have a risk in month 3 because that's when your property tax is due. You need to plan for that. We can do the same thing with our enterprise.
Okay. In that same vein, it strikes me that, I mean, I'll just say maybe the cultural differences between IT and cybersecurity departments, like sometimes they play better together than others. I'm curious what autonomous IT means for operations, security transformation, or just anywhere you have like cross-functional teams like this.
The word autonomous IT is very deliberately not autonomous IT operations and autonomous IT security, because philosophically, right, whatever your role is, you support the other. When we talk about security teams, you talk about the CIA triad, the confidentiality, the integrity, and availability. Well, those are also principles of IT ops. You need to make sure that your data is available for the users to use, that your system uptime is good, that you have systems available to deploy when needed. So they're not as separate as I think we've siloed them to be over the way we've kind of structured our organizations. And I also will say nobody wants more agents running on their endpoints. So unified, like when you can get one agent that serves all of those different teams, that's a breath of fresh air that actually makes the overall system health better. And I think that doesn't get talked about enough. Like nobody wants more agents to The idea of deploying more to reduce the amount of friction doesn't really work out mathematically.
Okay. We were talking a few minutes ago about legacy technology and how organizations can continue to derive value from it. You were also talking about how basically it sounds like MCPs can begin to flatten silos and get rid of these very federated sort of solutions. I'm curious though, what's the future of point solutions, especially where security is concerned, since there are so many of them?
So I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, but I think that what we're going to see, or what we should see, is a shift from point solutions being single points of truth themselves to point solutions being feeders of data that integrate with those other tools. There are some point solutions that do provide valuable input, but I think they become seen as feeders to a larger platform, whatever that platform is, because no single point solution can, we talked in our example about, we've got threat intelligence, we've got vulnerability scanning data, and we've got patch data. No point solution in any of those categories can give you full context of what you should do next. They're going to give you a very siloed view. There's no appetite for that anymore. We've got too many vulnerabilities. We've got too many programs to patch. We've got too many CVEs on the spreadsheet. I call it just, you're throwing stacks of CVEs into a bucket of dirty mop water every month and swirling it around. Like, we can't do that. We actually have to make a targeted tactical plan that works for the whole of business and the organization. So, I think unified visibility, autonomous control is a non-negotiable going forward.
So that opens the door to future-proof strategies and that sort of thing. The amount of detail and data and analytical power that is now at our fingertips begs the question of how AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning can not just help with threat detection, and I think you know where I'm going with this. Predictive analytics has been sort of a dark art for a while. This makes AI and autonomous IT seem to really start to make it a bit more trustworthy and an actual science. Is that off base? Can you see this from where you stand on the horizon?
I can. I'll give you kind of two approaches. One of them is these LLMs specifically are able to ingest a vast amount of information and summarize it and kind of let the analyst choose their own adventure through. Like, it walks them through without them having to figure out exact syntax for a query. The number of times that I have, the amount of hours I have wasted just trying to get queries correct is frustrating. We've removed that barrier. Now, obviously, trust but verify, hallucinations happen, we need to be careful, but it has freed up some of that mental energy so that your analysts are not taxed by the time they actually get the data they need. They haven't expended all of their cognitive energy. So I think that's one way. It's going to help them build better detections because they're going to be moving through data faster and they're going to be getting to the point quicker. The other aspect, are you familiar with MITRE's, I think they call it the threat inference engine or the tactic inference engine?
Yes.
So that was a MITRE project that it was based on a small sample of, I think, like 6,000 intrusion sets, where they said, if you see an attacker do this activity, you can predict one of these things to be the most likely next step they would take. Now, 6,000 intrusions is not globally significant, but it proved the value. And I think technology like that, which could be implemented under the hood of many products, gives you an opportunity to start having that suggestive, where do I hunt next? What's my next step? I feel like I'm in a dead end. Statistically, where do attackers go? That's also going to kind of shine a light in the common places the attacker hides and force the attacker to get more creative When people start having to innovate and get creative in attack scenarios, they make mistakes, which means they're even easier to find. So I do feel some sense of hope that we're going to get a little bit better at early warning and kind of predictive intelligence and leveraging that effectively.
All right. Melissa, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the role that partners could play in this transformation and this highly innovative landscape. What do you see there?
I think when you say partners, you mean like enablement partners, like deployment partners?
Deployment partners, resellers, distributors,
Absolutely.
those kinds of folks.
Yeah, I think so. Not every organization has AI modernization experts on staff. Your partner relationships are going to become valuable there. Those are the people who are going to have the muscle reps to get in there and show you how to implement some of these modernization technologies. I think that having that expertise and having the partners who have seen implementation at a broad scale is going to quickly distribute that knowledge of best practices faster than any organization can do with trial and error. I think that finding organizations you can partner with that specialize in your categories of data, categories of tooling, is just going to make the process more seamless and help your team focus on achieving actual outcomes faster.
Do you envision that something like autonomous IT can also help IT and security teams become, I'm going to call them better partners going forward?
Without a doubt. Like I said, the patch team can't make a good decision about what to patch without hearing from the threat intel and the vulnerability scanning components of their teams. They will make better decisions and they will actually move the business forward faster. Culturally, we have to break down some silos and we have to get away from that old school thinking of patching is separate from vuln management, is separate from incident response, is separate from threat intelligence. We are, I have a saying that I often use that in a crisis, whatever tool gets me the data I need and gets the result I need is the right tool, regardless of what it was marketed for, regardless of what quadrant it fits in. I need a tool that gets the job done. And I think we have to be thinking about all of our tooling in that regard as we do more integrations and as these data flows kind of cross between systems.
So lots of different places where autonomous IT is driving value to organizations. Can you offer up a use case that illustrates some of these concepts that we've been talking about?
Yeah, we've talked about patching. If you go to the board and say, we patch on a cadence, here's our monthly scan that we took 2 days after, we deployed the patches. So everything was up to date. What you have there is a gap that says, or that does not capture when maybe legacy tooling got deployed, a gold image with stale software got deployed to a massive part of the fleet 2 weeks after that patch window, right? What we are seeing with autonomous IT is that you can see that configuration drift or see that compliance drift sooner and address it in near real time. So we're not just measuring, our KPI goes from how quickly did we roll out Patch Tuesday to how quickly did we detect patch compliance drift and resolve it? Because that is a measure of resilience. The other is a measure of you're checking the box, you're technically doing the job, but the other is a measure of efficacy. I've even seen, we'll kind of zoom in a little, we've seen a lot of more use of living off the land by the adversary in the last year or two. They're not doing as much bespoke malware. They're not even using as many like commercial malware, so to speak. They are getting in and living off the land because that's their best chance of success. And remote management software is one of my favorite topics because adversaries love it. And every organization has at least one that they use legitimately, and probably several that their vendors require them to have installed for support contracts. The number of times that it's, we only deploy this RMM, right? But you've got version sprawl. Version 5.0 isn't in any of your deployment plans. Why is it installed in your environment? And it's because an adversary put it there. So it's bringing up those little gems
Right.
of wisdom that give people action that they can take, and they are not just checking a box.
Well, Melissa, you've managed to both reduce my anxiety around the future of autonomous IT and AI, and also increase my enthusiasm for it. So well done.
Goal
Any closing
accomplished.
thoughts for our audience here?
I just want to encourage organizations to see this as the transformational technology it is, approach it with a healthy degree of respect, prioritize governance, prioritize keeping the human in the loop, but don't be afraid to explore problems you previously thought were unsolvable, because I think you'll be surprised.
All right. Well, thanks for both breadth and depth for context setting around autonomous IT. Really appreciate you taking some time to talk with us today.
Thank you so much, Terry.
We've been talking with Melissa Bishoping of Tanium. Melissa, thank you so much. We so appreciate your time and expertise on how autonomous IT is transforming the enterprise. While we won't have a formal Q&A session with today's webinar, we will strongly encourage you to submit any questions you may have using that Q&A box. We will be sure to share them with Melissa and her team, who can reply to you offline. Finally, thanks as well to our sponsor, Tanium, as well as everyone in the audience. We appreciate your attention and participation. This webinar is copyright 2026 by Informa Target. Presentation materials are owned by or copyrighted by InformationWeek and Tanium. Individual speakers are solely responsible for their content and opinions. On behalf of our guests, Tanium and the InformationWeek team, I'm Terry Sweeney. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.